Number 9. Storm Dennis Ghost Ship. 2 years ago, a powerful windstorm known as Storm Dennis swept across Western Europe. It battered Ireland and the UK almost immediately after Storm Ciara, making things worse in places that were already experiencing catastrophic flooding. During Storm Dennis, the strong gusts swept a ghost ship ashore in County Cork, Ireland. It ran aground near the coastal fishing town of Ballycotton and came to rest on the rocks that line the shore. Known as the Alta, the 262-foot-long vessel was built in 1976. It sailed under various names under the Tanzanian flag. The ship was last manned in 2018 near Bermuda, where its crew was rescued by the Coast Guard after running into problems while sailing from Greece to Haiti. It lost power and was adrift in the Caribbean for 20 days while the crew tried to fix the problem. But a hurricane was on the way, leaving them with no choice but to abandon the ship. The Alta was last seen by a British Royal Navy ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean in September 2019 until it reappeared following the storm. It traveled thousands of miles before ending up off the Irish coast. The wrecked vessel became a popular attraction among photographers and urban explorers. Visitors were able to board the derelict ship and explore it after it washed up on the rocks. Someone claiming to be a representative of the Alta's owner reportedly came forward and tried to claim the wreck, but it remains where it crashed 2 years ago with an uncertain future. It has deteriorated to the point where the Cork County Council fears that it will break apart, and they're currently considering several options regarding what to do with it. They'll ultimately choose whether to leave the ship as it is, tow it out to sea, or dismantle it and scrap it. Number 8. The Penguin. Traversing an unforgiving polar environment can be both time-consuming and life-threatening. Exploring these landscapes became much easier with the invention of specially built vehicles. But the earliest designs weren't exactly the greatest, and it took some trial and error to develop vehicles that are truly equipped to handle the snow and ice. One colossal machine, known as the Antarctic Snow Cruiser, ended up being left behind because it was easier than trying to drive it anywhere. Nicknamed the Penguin, it was designed as a mobile base in the United States Antarctic Survey Expedition. The vehicle was built over an 11-week period in 1939, and it malfunctioned pretty much from the moment it was completed. While making the 1,020-mile trip from Chicago to Boston, the Penguin's steering system was damaged, causing it to drive off a bridge in Ohio. It remained stuck for 3 days before it was freed and resumed its journey. The Penguin went back to the Bay of Whales in Antarctica next, where it experienced a host of problems right off the bat. It navigated poorly in the snow and ice, which isn't surprising since the vehicle's tires had no tread and were originally designed for a swamp vehicle. Attaching chains to the tires did little to improve their tread, and the wheels continued to spin freely whenever someone tried to drive the Penguin. In fact, it moved best in reverse. All 92 miles of its longest trek was done entirely backwards. And when the US government became entangled in World War II, the project in Antarctica ground to a halt. Personnel were called back to America, and the Penguin was abandoned. It was rediscovered briefly in 1958 beneath 23 feet of snow. The interior was exactly as it had been left. After that, the vehicle once again disappeared and was never seen again. Experts believe that it's been reburied by snow and ice or fell into the Southern Ocean. Number 7. Antarctic Explorer's Journal. In summer 2014, during an annual melting period in Antarctica, explorer George Murray Levick's lost journal appeared in the ice as a clump of soaking wet paper. Levick, a young surgeon, participated in Robert Falcon Scott's 1910 to 1913 British Antarctic expedition, known as the Terra Nova mission, as a member of the Northern Party. The explorers aimed to become the first to reach the South Pole, but not only did the competing Amundsen Party beat Scott's team there, Scott and his Southern Party crew perished along their return journey. Levick survived, but his journal somehow got left behind, and conservationists painstakingly reconstructed and digitized it over a century later in 2014. In the diary, Levick recorded historical and zoological observations, including penguin sexual habits and other behaviors as he witnessed an entire breeding season of an Adelie penguin colony. The ambitious explorer also documented his experience spending 7 months stranded in a small, cramped ice cave in 1912 when the Terra Nova vessel was unable to reach shore to retrieve the crew. Following the horrendous ordeal, Levick embarked on the first step of his journey back to civilization, walking 200 miles to the base camp and dropping his diary along the way. Number 6. Martian Mineral. Earlier this year, scientists announced the discovery of a rare mineral called jarosite beneath the Antarctic ice. Jarosite comes from Mars and is rarely seen on Earth. It's yellow-brown in color and requires both water and acidic conditions to form. It's common on Mars, even though the planet's current conditions are not conducive to its formation. Scientists have long wondered how jarosite became so abundant on the red planet. Some experts believe that Mars was once covered in ice, making it possible for the mineral to form in the distant past. The recently discovered presence of jarosite in Antarctica could help support this theory, according to a recent study. Jarosite typically occurs on Earth when mining waste is exposed to rain and air. It also forms near volcano vents. The team that discovered it never expected to find it. Much to their surprise, they detected traces of it in the deepest layers of a mile-long ice core they extracted. The researchers determined that the particles formed within ice pockets, indicating that the jarosite on Mars could have originated the same way. This is just one of several ways that scientists have used the Antarctic environment to study space in recent years. The conditions there are closer to mimicking the Martian environment than anywhere else in the world, and researchers are taking advantage of the opportunity to make these connections. If you were given the chance to visit Mars, would you? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Cargo Plane Tragedy. A U.S. Air Force cargo plane went missing in 1952 while traveling from Washington State to Anchorage, Alaska. Less than a week later, Civil Air Patrol Lieutenant Terrace Moore found the wreck on Mount Gannett. It had crash-landed several miles off course, killing all 52 souls aboard. The plane was barely recognizable. Only its tail remained intact. The crash had triggered a huge avalanche, encasing the downed aircraft in snow and ice. It became even more hidden due to glacial movement. Just a year after the crash, 50 feet of snow had piled on top of the plane. It disappeared completely until 2012, when an Army National Guard pilot noticed debris while flying a helicopter overhead. At first, officials assumed that it was a recent crash that nobody had reported yet. But a ground search revealed the aircraft's true identity and age. In the 60 years since the crash, the plane had traveled 13 miles from the original site of the accident. A volunteer military crew travels to the wreck every year during the 1 month that it's safe to go to the site, and they recover what they can. The growing collection of artifacts includes uniforms, dog tags, wedding rings, wallets, and more. Every time they search the wreck, the team finds more airplane parts and other items. Additionally, the search team has recovered the remains of 37 people who perished in the accident. Air Force officials ruled the accident resulted from a navigational error caused by bad weather and poor instruments. Number 4. Antarctica's first plane crash. The first aircraft to visit Antarctica was a single-propeller Vickers plane that Australian explorer Douglas Mawson used in his expedition of the continent during the early 20th century. He abandoned the plane on an ice shore at Cape Denison in 1911 after its engine seized up during a demonstration flight. Until relatively recently, the last time anyone spotted the aircraft was back in 1975 during an unusually low tide. A team of Australian explorers rediscovered it on New Year's Day in 2010 after a painstaking 3-year search. While walking along the shore of Commonwealth Bay, team member Mark Farrell noticed metal along the rocks in just a few inches of water. It was the plane's fuselage. The team had an ultra-low tide, courtesy of a blue moon, as well as melting ice to thank for the aircraft's unexpected appearance. Team leader David Jensen said that the conditions gave them the 1 in a million chance they needed to spot the plane. Number 3. Massive valleys. In recent years, scientists discovered 3 incredibly vast valleys hidden beneath hundreds of feet of Antarctic ice. The findings comprise the first batch of data yielded in the European Space Agency-funded Polar Gap project, which began in 2015 and aimed to better understand the South Pole's geography and gravity field. A study published in the journal Geophysical Research Letters documented the project's 2-year aerial survey, which measured the landscape using gravity and magnetism sensors, as well as radar and laser technology. At over 217 miles long, roughly the distance between New York and Boston, and 21 miles wide, Foundation Trough is the largest of the 3 newly discovered valleys. The Patuxent Trough is the second largest, measuring 186 miles long and over 9 miles wide. At 93 miles long and 18 miles wide, the offset rift basin is the smallest of the trio. None of the valleys can be seen by the naked eye, however, at least for now. All 3 are situated in an area west of the South Pole where the east and west Antarctic ice sheets melt, known as the Ice Divide. Here, there's what scientists call a bottleneck, which is helping to hold Antarctic ice together with the help of mountains, for now. Melting ice threatens to weaken the bottleneck, however, potentially speeding up the channelizing ice flows that carry ice out into the oceans, thereby increasing the rate at which the ice sheets vanish. Number 2. Juliet Delta 321. Juliet Delta 321 was a C-130 Hercules cargo plane that took an unexpectedly long break from flying due to mechanical problems in 1971. One of the rockets needed for takeoff had malfunctioned after delivering supplies to Antarctica, and the plane's landing gear collapsed, causing it to crash land on the ice. Nobody was injured, thankfully. but salvaging the plane was deemed to be too complicated and expensive. Instead, Juliet Delta 321 was stripped of its radios, instruments, and other navigational equipment. Everything else, including the aircraft itself, was abandoned at the crash site. In the years following the accident, 2 other crashed C-130 cargo planes were rescued from Antarctica. It made the prospect of salvaging the C-130 that had crashed in 1971 seem a lot more realistic. In 1986, 15 years after the accident, plans were finally made to retrieve Juliet Delta 321. For 5 weeks, a 6-man crew worked to dig the aircraft out from under 20 feet of snow. Then they removed the engines and sent them in for repairs. Another crew came the next season and performed repairs to the plane at the site. In early 1988, Juliet Delta 321 once again took to the skies, more than 16 years after it had come to rest on the ice. Number 1. Ancient rainforest. Around 90 million years ago, during the Cretaceous period, Antarctica contained a thriving, swampy rainforest full of vegetation, standing in stark contrast to the seemingly lifeless modern-day landscape. In an April 2020 study published in the journal Nature, researchers announced the discovery of remnants of this rainforest in a sediment core sample collected in February 2017 in West Antarctica. Ancient forest soil within the sample contained abundant fossilized plant pollen and spores, including evidence of the first flowering plants found at such high southern latitudes, according to earthsky.org. Additionally, using CT scan technology, scientists detected a dense network of fossilized plant roots. They're so well preserved, the researchers were able to observe individual cell structures. The ancient forest was located roughly 560 miles from the South Pole at the time, yet its climate was favorable, with an average temperature of 54 degrees Fahrenheit and summer temperatures hitting a high of around 66 degrees Fahrenheit. Moreover, the climate was much hotter than it is today, with tropical sea temperatures hitting as high as 95 degrees Fahrenheit and sea levels sitting 560 feet higher than they do now. Sediment cores from the West Antarctic rainforest show that the region received moderately abundant rainfall and that it was likely blanketed in thick, lush vegetation. But how did plant life survive the 4 months of darkness that the continent experienced annually? At the time, Antarctica contained no significant ice sheets and carbon dioxide concentrations were high, making this mild environment possible even during the continent's periods of darkness. For scientists, one major unanswered question remains: what caused the Earth to cool back down and the ice sheets to reform? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.